Hello, everyone, and welcome to Lit Chick on a Mighty Blaze. I'm Jenna Paone, and I am so thrilled to welcome today a very special VIP guest. We have Carly Riordan. She is the founder and author and blogger and lifestyle guru behind her eponymous blog, Carly the Prepster, or carlyriordan.com. I know that you go kind of by both.
Yeah.
We are so thrilled to have you here. And Carly has just released her first book, Business Minded, and we are here to talk about that. Welcome, Carly. How you doing today?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
We're so thrilled to have you. To everyone out there watching, please feel free to add comments and questions in the chat. And our producer, Julie Gerstenblatt, will get those to us. Right off the top, before we get into everything, I do just want to say we at The Blaze here are extremely mindful of everything that's happening in the world right now. Our hearts are with the people of Ukraine. This is a strange day to have sort of happy, fun book conversations. And it's actually really appropriate that I think that Carly's our guest today, and that Carly's book is the one that we're talking about today, because her book is really about how to set up your life so that you are able to not just run a business, but be a functional person. And I think it's really hard in the world we're living in to maintain a little bit of sanity. And we're all trying to do this. So we're so thrilled to have Carly today. And we truly hope that you can all take a little bit of a breather with us right now. Have a little bit of time for a little self-care and focus, and then get back out there and fight the good fight a little more. So welcome, Carly. Thank you again for being here today.
Thank you.
I'm going to give you guys a little bit of background info on Carly, and then we're going to jump right into the book. A lifestyle blogger living in the tri-state area, Carly Riordan is the founder of Carly's Book Club, Carly's Stitch Club, and of course, her eponymous blog, Carly, which she established in 2008. Carly is a numbers person, a graduate of Georgetown University's undergraduate business school, where she balanced being a high-achieving student, an athlete, and an emerging blogger. She turned her blog into a legitimate, successful business using the concepts she learned in school. And now, with the release of her first book, Business Minded, she's passing along all her best advice, along with words of wisdom from 18 other creative entrepreneurs about how to launch and sustain a creative business without losing your passion or health along the way. Welcome, Carly, and congratulations again. We're so thrilled to have you. You've put together such a great practical guide for how to be a creative professional, which, so many of us today in this world, we have careers that didn't exist 30 or 40 years ago, or even 20 years ago. And there's not really a great roadmap. And you've kind of put together a roadmap of how to be a self-sustaining creative professional. Can you tell us a little more about the book and what inspired you to write it?
When I started my blog, I did not start it with the intention of it becoming a business. And it was something that unfolded naturally, as industry changed. And I think it's a pretty good reminder that, what we're doing today, we aren't our parents' generation where you got a job and you climbed the corporate ladder and it looked pretty linear.
Yep.
And there was kind of one path. Now you can go in a million different directions. And in fact, you should just assume that life's going to take you in a million different directions, and things are evolving and changing so quickly that you have to. And then in terms of the actual idea behind the book, a couple of years ago, I'd gone to a creative camp, and I went just as a participant. I was interested in learning about, from the different business owners that were going to be there. And my friend and I went, and everyone in the audience had some sort of creative business. Or maybe it was an idea, or it was fully functioning, or somewhere in between. But everyone was in this creative space, kind of wanting to monetize it.
So great.
And we're sitting in this audience with all these creative people, and they keep bringing out these amazing businesswomen and entrepreneurs, and they're telling their stories. And at the end of the conference, we had this brunch, and everyone kind of stood up to introduce themselves. And something that kept coming up over and over again was that people didn't feel like they were business savvy enough to actually have a business. And there was this huge lack of confidence. And they were able to say, well, I'm a creative. I know I can make a great product, but I can't turn this into a business. And there was just this huge lack of confidence. And I was sitting in the audience, in this restaurant, as everyone was going around talking about it, thinking, my God, I just like wanted to shake everyone and say, you are so capable of doing this. Like, you don't need to have gone to business school. Like
Yeah.
if you're creative, you actually probably have a lot more skills than a lot of business people because you're creative and you can figure
Yeah.
out solutions to problems that like people might not see. And so I stood up and kind of gave this like quick 15-minute spiel of trying to, instill some confidence. And I came home from the conference and wrote this 16-page single-spaced document that I sent out to everyone with kind of just like things that I felt like people could just hack their way through business.
Yeah.
And I ended up using that PDF to pitch the idea for this book. And I was so grateful that the team at DK, saw my vision and
Yeah.
let me run with it.
I love this. This is so, I mean, it's the ultimate kind of example of like seeing a problem and saying, I can do something to help solve this. And like, and what you've done really is give other people the tools to solve their own problems, which is very impressive. And I think for a lot of women, myself included, the idea of the imposter syndrome thing and feeling like you can't do things. I'm always very impressed. I do follow your blog and socials very closely. I'm always impressed by how you break down other things, and this book is no exception. Like, for example, Carly has a lot of amazing posts about how she breaks down photos. Something as simple as you have a young son and how to take pictures of yourself with your children. And as a new mom, like that like was so eye-opening to me. I never thought, oh, I can set up a tripod and take a beautiful picture of myself and my daughter without waiting for somebody else to take a good shot. And you seem to have a really good way of breaking down like technical and maybe scary topics that for creatives like math and numbers, and you seem to be like a very evenly left brain, right brain kind of person. Did you always know that you wanted to break it into the two sections, the business? Because the first section is the business section, which is the nuts and bolts. And the second part is really how to do this in a way that's actually sustainable. And we'll talk about both of them individually, but did you conceive of it as, I want to do this, together, these two parts?
Yeah. So that was a big part of that PDF originally, because, it's crazy. I've been doing my blog for years. I mean, I started in 2008, so I don't even know what the math is anymore. I don't know what year it is right now. But
you're a new mom. Nobody knows what year it is.
Being a mom and the
pandemic,
like, what even is time?
It's like 2015. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's something.
And one of the things I talk about, especially, this is like a twofold answer, but a big thing for me was, one, on paper, and even if like I think people were like looking outward in on what I do, which is kind of what my whole job is, like people looking in, it looks like I know what I'm doing. And I every day don't know what I'm doing. And like that was part of the book inspiration for me, was like, well, there's like an imposter syndrome that everyone has. And like, I think people look at other people and what they're doing and that they must have it figured out. And because I don't have it figured out, that I could never do it. And it's like, I guarantee you those people sitting up on the stage at the conference, or the people you're following on Instagram, like they're figuring it out too.
Wow.
And so I talk a lot about my own personal journey of like, I didn't know how to start a business when I started a business. I didn't even know I was starting a business.
Yep.
And a big section of not knowing what you're doing is I didn't really know how to properly take care of myself and my mind, and all the things that I thought went into running a successful business meant putting myself on the back burner, which was so wrong. And I fixed that over the years.
Yeah.
And, I've learned the hard way. And so part of the book was like, yes, you need all this. You don't really need it, but all this stuff knowing about business will help you, but you can't run a successful business if you're not also in a good mindset and a good, healthy place mentally and physically. You need both. And so that was really, really important to me, because it was a huge mistake that I had made. And I wish I could go back to the beginning and take care of not just my business, but also my whole self.
Well, I think it's an understandable mistake. I mean, you and I are both of the millennial generation of like hustle culture and boss babes, and like the idea that there's not only, it's not only like a given that you have to like spend every second of your existence working or you will never get anywhere, but it is actually something to aspire to, and burnout is something that you should aspire to and move towards.
Yeah.
It's such a toxic and dangerous idea, and it's one that I have a lot of trouble letting go of, this idea that like I can take a moment to be a mother or have a life event and like
Well,
be okay,
not only that you can take it,
but you
like, I genuinely think you have to take it
yeah.
because, like, I talk about how when graduated, I graduated in 2012. I think it was, like, peak Pinterest hashtag girl boss culture, and it was like
Yep.
what's funny is I felt like I had to burn the candle at both ends of the stick because otherwise
Mhm.
I wasn't successful enough, and not only did I
Yeah.
have to do it, but I had to, like, tell everyone I was doing it, so we were
Yeah.
all, like, creating this, like, self-fulfilling prophecy of, like, "Well, no, you need to be" like, had this, like, little this was, like, pre-Fitbit, but, like,
Yeah.
some sort of tracker thing that I used to wear, I can't even remember what it was called. I felt like sharing my sleep stats, which were genuinely dangerous, that I was sleeping 4 hours a night was, like, a positive thing, and I look back and I'm like, "It's a miracle I didn't have, like, more health issues." I ultimately did have severe health issues, but, like, didn't have more health issues
Yeah.
earlier
Yeah.
or even more intense, and it's just so unhealthy, and it was such a bad mindset, and I'm still fighting that,
I think everyone is, which is why your book is so great. It's really like a giant, nobody needs permission, but it is a giant book of permission to live a life and be more than your job, which is which actually creates a better, healthier working environment. And I have to applaud, I think you're your own best example. It seems like, like clearly, like you've had a big year. You've had a lot of big life events, very happy and very also, some challenging life events going on while we're in the midst of a global pandemic, while the world is burning down around us. And you conceived of and wrote a book in lightning speed in terms of how publication works. Can you tell us a little bit about the writing process and what it was like from original, from idea to completion of the book, and how that journey was for you?
Yeah, it was like, the only way to describe it is that it was a whirlwind, and, like, I really am so grateful to the DK team because I really felt like they let me run with it, which
Mhm.
was such a positive, but it was a tight deadline, so
Yeah.
we I the timing is kinda confusing in my head, but I think over the summer, I'd had a couple of calls with a few different editors
Mhm.
and had pitched actually a few different ideas, and the book ended up being, like, a meshing of, like, 2 separate concepts.
Nice.
And they came back to me and they're like, "Okay," it kinda came out of the blue because I felt like we'd had the conversation and, like, it didn't go anywhere as far as I was concerned, but there were
Mhm.
stuff going on in the background, and they said, "Okay, our sales team wants to see this book made. Here's, like, the pitch." Um, I I wanna acknowledge that it's much easier to sell a book idea when you have a big audience,
Yeah.
like, that is something that publishers are looking for, which if you wanna get into book writing,
Yes.
start working on that audience, even if it's just a newsletter or a Twitter account, like, anything works. It doesn't need to be, like, crazy numbers. You don't need 1,000,000 followers, but
Yeah.
having an audience helps. But anyway, I signed the book deal essentially and pretty much immediately found out I was pregnant right after I signed the book deal. So, it was wild to be growing a baby and writing a book at the same time. Um
I'm surprised your brain worked. Like, quite frankly, like, I'm still, like, editing my own book, and, like, I basically didn't do anything for the first 3 months of my pregnancy because I could not think. I could hardly spell my own name, and,
So
like,
I kept sending we broke down the book into chunks of, like, deadlines to keep me on track, which was very necessary. The hardest part was just coming up with a table of contents because
Mhm.
I was never the student who, like, wrote the outline for her essays. I just was, like, more of, I'll write the essay and it'll, like,
Yep.
come together in the end,
Yeah.
and then I'd write the outline to submit because you had to show your work. So I would do it after the fact, being like, yeah, of course I had my outline like ready to go. Never did. But coming up with the table of contents helped. And then breaking it down into like monthly, um, I basically wrote a quarter of the book
Yeah.
every month for 4 months. And I was just writing. So once I wrote something, I didn't really go back and review it
Mm.
and kind of just passed it on to the team. And I was like, I was afraid. Like the imposter syndrome really set in. Like I almost had no memory of what I'd written. And it was scary when I got the first real like PDF back. I thought I was afraid to open it. And I didn't open it for a few days because I thought, how do I get out of this contract if this is just horrible? And I opened up the PDF and like the team and the designer, like they really took what I wanted it to be like and made it happen. And when I was flipping through it, I did have a moment where I was like, oh, I'm actually really proud of this.
That's good.
I was reading some of the stuff and thinking, I can't believe I wrote this.
There's always that kind of magic thing of like you don't know what your brain is doing while you're writing, and there's sort of something magical that happens and it just
Yeah,
works, and you don't realize it until you go back.
it was
So
crazy.
it honestly, like, it's not a bad way to go. As a chronic overthinker, like, to me, your way sounds better, and I can't help but wonder if the fact that you write, every single day. Your blog is substantial. Yes, you have beautiful pictures and you do your style posts and things, but you also have a lot of substantial content. And when you think about it, you have a daily writing habit that you have had
Yeah.
for all these years. Do you think that helped you in being able to kind of just access your voice and put pen to paper and just get the words on the paper? Like, how to put your butt in the chair and make something happen.
Yeah, I think, I've never thought of it that way, but I've basically been practicing my writing voice for a decade. And,
Yeah.
I actually get like it's probably not my number one, but maybe like top 5 criticism from people like, oh, well, your writing is terrible. And like, to me, yeah, my blog isn't going to be winning like Nobel prizes or anything. I'm not going to be submitting that for like, literature awards. It's
That's
to
the point.
me, it's a conversation, and that it's so much more important to have a conversation. And it's actually quite difficult to write as a conversation because I think when people get behind a keyboard, they immediately start like formulating sentences like how we grew up in school. I mean, I went to Georgetown, I can write
Yeah.
analytical and academic papers, but like I don't want to sign on to my computer at 9 o'clock in the morning and read. Like, I think that sounds snobby, and I probably would look at a blog like that and think, like, who does she think she is? So like that's never my intention. And there's a time and a place for that kind of writing.
Mhm.
And I wanted my book. I don't think I really thought about it this way, but a
Yeah.
big part of my book, I love talking to entrepreneurs and I
Yeah.
love talking to women. I wish I
Love
could do
that.
more of it. I just don't have enough time. Like some of my favorite conversations are when I sit down with someone, whether it's a friend or a stranger or a blog reader or someone I'm sitting next to on a plane and they say, I have this idea. It is my favorite thing to talk about. Like I could hash out business ideas with people
Yeah.
breakfast, noon, and night. And like maybe that's my second mountain, that I climb
Nice.
later. And I think I wanted my book to be like, no, this is me sitting down with you and like what I would tell you over a cup of coffee.
So I
2 cups of coffee, but
So honestly, as a reader, that's what I got from it. And quite frankly, everything you were saying about tone and voice, like I have like written down like here, like a question about how I love your conversational and casual style of voice. And personally, I am the person that gets like on social media or, and I freeze and I become like, suddenly I'm like, and with to and therefore, like, and I'm like, what? Nobody, like, I don't talk like this in real life. And like, I feel like it's a genuinely difficult thing to communicate via social media and via blogs and via the internet in a way that feels friendly and conversational and warm. And I think you nail it. And I
oh,
think
thank
you
you.
nail it in this book too. It does feel like I'm sitting down with you, having a cup of coffee, and you're like, here are some things that I learned. And like, here are the ways that they can help you. In this way, I think it's a great book for every writer should read this book. Every creative should read this book. Every artist, every person should read this book because creatives are so afraid of the other side. And this just makes it seem like this is just another part of your business. This is easy. This is something you have to do, but it is not impossible. So
No.
thank you for making it really clear and really comfortable.
And I think like something that was important to me when I was writing this and when I was thinking about like who is going to be reading this book
Yeah.
was when I started school, Georgetown, I really struggled in the business school because first of all, well,
It's a traditional business.
this actually fits for the book, was that I was really struggling and really not in a good mental place.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of it, like, you know, you're sitting in these classrooms. My freshman year was 2008. So the financial crisis was happening. And the professors would come in and they were scary. And
Yeah.
I will never forget, I think it was one of my first days of class.
Mm.
So this is like my first college class, and I'm sitting in this lecture hall, and a professor comes in, international business, and he slams like the textbook down, or at least in my memory, that's how, you know,
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
he puts the book down and he says, every single person who was sitting in this chair 4 months ago who graduated thinking that they had a cushy job at Lehman Sachs just got fired. And that was scary. And, you know, the business school actually really did a big transformation over the 4 years that I was there, from going from consulting and finance focused to like having a much more entrepreneurial curriculum, which I think was great.
Yeah.
But I was sitting in all these classrooms for 4 years with these thick textbooks that were getting so outdated every semester because things were happening so fast in the technology world. And I thought by the time I graduated and I was running a business and I was making money, and I just kept thinking, I don't think it's as hard as these professors want you to think it to be. Like, I think there's like this intimidation factor to be like, here are all the hoops you're going to have to jump through. And here, no, like think of all the idiots who have started businesses and like are running businesses. It's like, well, you can do it too. Like, don't be stopped because you don't know how to do things perfectly.
Yeah.
And it's like, something I want to just like scream out.
I mean, it's kind of incredible that you started this blog as a creative outlet during this time. And it makes a lot of sense because being in this traditional business school environment, and like full disclosure, my husband is actually a business school professor, and but he's a really nice one. And
Maybe we can have some copies of my book in there.
Exactly. Like what he always says is, you know, that like his job is to actually make it simple and not scary. And like he approaches it from that angle of like, my job is to explain things in a way that anyone could understand, even if they had no idea. But that traditional, like that sort of, you know, business schools, when you were in school and when I was in school, like they prepared you for a certain type of job, right? They prepared you for consulting. They prepared you for, you know, like that was what it was, or finance, or, you know, like these sort of traditional jobs. And this whole world was opening up, and you were really on the ground floor of this. Like you started a blog and you figured out a way to monetize it. And, you know, and then you kind of built, you know, organically little by little. And you know, now you have so many different outlets. I mean, for those of you who don't know, I'm sure you all do if you're watching. You know, Carly has her blog. She also has Carly's book club. You have Carly's Stitch Club, and you have all of these different outlets, and you manage all of them, and you manage your own personal socials and everything, and it all works into a nice collective whole. And I think a book is a great product for a business like yours. Like I really do. And I think it's brilliant how so one of the things about the book is you interview all of these fabulous entrepreneurs who are all female. I
think there's some like partners involved, but
yeah,
but I really wanted to focus on females.
Yeah, there's small female-owned brands that are doing good and putting out great products, and there are a lot of the companies that you work with on a daily basis. And I think it's so brilliant to go out there and say, okay, let's have a conversation about how you built this. How did you go about selecting the folks that you were going to have in the book? And I'd love to talk a little bit about the interviews you had with them and some of the fun things that you learned. So let's start with process of how you kind of, you know, approached people.
So I'm so grateful. Selfishly, one of my favorite things about having a blog is that it has connected me with so many entrepreneurs, especially female entrepreneurs. And there are just countless women that I admire for all the
Yep.
types of different kinds of businesses that they've created. And especially like in different chapters of lives, and mom starting businesses and second mountains and then starting businesses when they're young. Like, I'm just so inspired by that in general. And something that was really important to me when I was interviewing and picking who I wanted to interview for the book was that I wanted people to see themselves reflected on the page. And the reality is, like, there are a million kinds of businesses that you can start,
Yep.
and you can have a service, you can have a product,
Yep.
you can have 1,000 employees, you can have one employee,
Yep.
you can be the only employee. Like, they're all businesses and they're all legitimate. It doesn't mean that one's better than the other. Having 1,000 employees doesn't necessarily mean you have a better business model than someone with one.
Yep.
In fact, you might be more profitable with only one or with a handful of people. And so I think that was like a big issue that I kept hearing from different people, was feeling like, oh, I need to go out and fundraise money to be a real entrepreneur. And I need to, no, no.
Yeah.
Like, you can start this with $10. You can start this with 0. You can slowly build. You can decide, I don't want to be an entrepreneur. I want to keep it a hobby. Like, all of these things were important to me, especially when interviewing the entrepreneurs. And everything was everything was definitely virtual. This was, during the pandemic, and I was also unable to travel myself.
Yep.
And I loved how it all came together.
Yeah.
This was one of those things where I was kind of flying by the seat of my pants. And I was like, how is this going to come together in the end? And I'd reached out to a ton of entrepreneurs, and I let people kind of pick a chapter or a topic that really spoke to them and that they thought was part of their story. And it was so cool, because one thing that I loved was that everyone was like, well, I could talk to 20 of these topics. And I thought, oh my God, this is exactly like what is important, because it's not that you just need to focus on one thing, like, you need the collective whole. And I just loved their responses to all the different questions and how they fit into the book so nicely. And really, I could have interviewed each of the entrepreneurs for every single section, and I'm sure they would have had a great interview, because they're running businesses that are multifaceted, and
they're impressive. I mean, that actually is one of my favorite things in the book is I feel like you did such a great job of pairing people with the topics. Like, I think about like Sarah Flint Shoes with the pricing with pricing, and and Dudley Stevens with with social consciousness and social good. Like, you really did a great job of choosing entrepreneurs and choosing companies that so so wonderfully demonstrate the topics that you're speaking about, and also love all the brand. Like, I mean,
and they're just people that I really personally admire. And again, like, this is all making a lot more sense now that I'm thinking about it, but maybe it was in the back of my mind, I didn't realize it. But these are all people that I've met or I've talked with. I haven't met every single one, but I've communicated with them, or I've followed their brands for a while. And they're people that I would want to sit down and have coffee with, not to like pick their brains necessarily, because that's like one of my least favorite things to do, but just to like get to know them and to understand their story more. And I think I liked being able to reflect that in the book, and maybe having like a little tidbit for everyone to have that little cup of coffee with them, even if they never get the chance to meet them in real life.
I love that. It does seem like a really, really supportive network of women and people, all of whom are doing their own thing, but helping each other in the same project. It's cooperation and helping each other out. And it seems like a really nice community to be part of. How did this book kind of even increase that for you? Like, did you develop some closer relationships with people as a result of this? Did you, kind of learn some new things? Was there anything that surprised you about this when you did this?
I think the biggest thing, and I'm like eternally grateful to everyone who did the interview. It was an interesting process, because I know so many entrepreneurs. I'd reached out to so many, and not everyone could participate. And so it made me feel so much appreciation for the people who did. And, what I find interesting was like, I was so grateful for someone who just responded back and said, thank you so much for thinking of me, but I don't have the time for it, versus someone who like showed interest and then ghosted or just never
Yeah.
responded.
Yep.
And it wasn't necessarily, it was never the people who had like the biggest companies and so much going on that they were like too above responding, which I loved. Like,
Yeah.
even the people who had so much going on just like took the minute to just say, I'm so sorry, I can't do it. And I appreciated that. And it was like, okay, I need to do this for other people too. Even if it's a no, like that goes a long way.
Yeah.
And
Polite.
then
Yeah. That's
just getting to like go back and forth with some of these people and asking questions that like I've been curious or, I wanted to know more about, and kind of getting into the nitty gritty, even though the interviews are pretty short. Like, I'm sure I could sit down with any of these people and like have hour-long conversations. But I think the biggest thing was just being so grateful to the people who said yes.
Yeah. It's so great. And I want to shift gears just a little bit for a second. I want to talk about this idea of fail quickly, because you say right in the book, like you have a fail quickly mentality, which I think I can see. Like, so not only have you done this, like, and I just want to remind people that like Carly has a very large platform. So everything you do is public. And it's whether you're succeeding or failing, quote unquote, you do it very publicly. And that's a whole layer of pressure that, like, frankly scares me to no end. Like, I'm fine failing as long as I like do it in my own little, like in the closet underneath the stairs. And like it's very hard for me to be open about failure. And I so admire your the idea of failing quickly, that I'm going to do this, I'm going to try it, I'm not going to get hung up on it, and I'm going to just go for it. And B, that I'm going to do this and I'm going to do it in the right way, and I'm just going to move on with my life. Is that a mentality that you've always had, or is that something you had to cultivate over the years? And it's something that like you just kind of had to learn by default because of the nature of the blog and the world that you're in?
So I think in the same way that I graduated into like the hashtag girl boss hustle culture, I also think we grew up in like a quitting is bad culture.
Yeah.
And I actually don't think quitting is bad.
Yeah.
Giving up is probably not the greatest, but quitting is different than giving up. Quitting is deciding this isn't for me. It no longer serves me. This isn't something I want to do. Whereas giving up might be like, well, things just got hard, so I'm just going to like walk away. And also this idea of like failure is not an option.
Yeah.
And I mean, it kind of is a full circle moment that I had failed my accounting class, or I didn't fail the class. I failed the first exam.
That's okay. You can fail accounting. We're good. I didn't even take accounting. I skipped it because
it was hard.
I gave up on, I quit math. Okay. I quit math.
Yeah. That's something I talk about in the book, is that it takes all kinds of people to go around. So surround yourself with the people who are good at math. But I failed my accounting exam, and I genuinely thought if I failed at something, the world could not possibly go on, which sounds so stupid, but like I believed that.
Yeah.
And it was such an eye-opening experience to realize like I failed an exam, and I was coming close to failing the class, and the world kept on spinning. My own world kept on spinning. Like, life was just going to go on, and it was fine. It wasn't fun, but like it was fine. And I ended up starting my blog because I hated school so much. So like it ended up working out great because of that.
So accounting.
Yeah. And another twofold response to this is I did want my book to kind of help people walk through their business idea, so that if it wasn't going to work out, they would kind of get to some roadblocks along the way and realize, A, maybe I don't want to do this. B, this isn't actually the right business to be profitable, or I need to rework my ideas so that it can be a business. And to use the workbook so that you're not wasting money and time, like figure that out beforehand. But I have thought about doing different things in my life. And I think like an example that I think about often is I thought, because I was a a style blogger that I needed to start a fashion line because it seemed like that was like the next thing to do. Other people were starting to do it, and I thought, well, it makes sense. Like that's what the next step is. And I partnered with someone I went to school with, and we had all these great ideas. I'd also just quit my job, so I think I felt like in that hustle culture, like, well, I need another source of income like ASAP. I quit my job, like I'm gonna fail at life if I don't do a million things like right now. And then looking back, I'm like, I hate this. And I was going in the garment district in Manhattan, and I was like, even just picking up fabric, I was like, nothing about this sparks joy for me. And I literally despised it from the week things were going, and I quickly bailed. And I think people look back and they're like, oh my God, her failed fashion line. I'm like, I am so glad that thing that I chose to fail because it was not for me. And I quickly learned it and moved on.
And I think that's really smart. I think it's really smart to do the things that you actually want to do in life and not just feel like, well, you have to do this because this person did it and you have to do that. Like it can be really hard. And again, you're so on social, like you're so public, like with social media. And I feel like it's that added level of pressure of people commenting and the meanness that, that you have to deal with. I feel like, I genuinely feel like for anyone kind of public facing, because I feel like you can't win no matter what you do. You're always going to lose. You're always going to kind of, somebody is always going to be annoyed because people have nothing better to do than to like, just
so I talk about this in one of the chapters. I think it was in the idea chapter, which is towards the beginning because, ideas are at the start. This is like a little piece of advice, like don't share your business idea unless you're like prepared to have people tell you why it's a terrible idea, because I don't know why, I don't know if it's like an American mindset or something, but people love to tell you why things aren't going to work out. You rarely hear people like, that is a great idea because it's going to solve this problem. People are like, that's your idea? Oh my God, that's not going to work out because of this. That's a dumb idea because of that. You're not the right person to do it. And like, I am so glad I didn't listen to a lot of people who told me like the blog would never be a business. My parents included. Like we had gotten into a big fight in my senior year of college because I was like, well, this is what I'm going to do. Like, I'm not going to get a job. And it was not received well. I kind of wish I had listened to myself ultimately, and I didn't. Like, people are just going to find issues.
And there's a big difference between parental concern of like, we want our daughter, like, knowing that somebody has your best interest at heart, and like, and then somebody who just wants to be a jerk for no reason.
The reality is it's going to come from everywhere. So, I actually like recommend not sharing ideas with people, not because like to hoard them and to say like, oh, I don't want someone to steal my idea, but it can kind of take the wind out of your sails if someone, especially if it's someone that you do want their support, it can be hard.
It can be. Last couple quick questions, and we're going to let you go. How are you doing right now? You're in a very new, exciting life. You're a new mom. You got married this past year. Like, talk about a big year. I mean, it's been just a big year in everything. And how are you kind of taking your own advice and moving through this new phase of life? It's so overwhelming. I just went through becoming a mother, and it was the hardest year of my life. Like, no joke. And how are you doing? How are you doing right now?
So like when I was pregnant and writing this book during last winter, which was like a tough winter, there was a lot of snow and it was dark and the insurrection had happened and I was very sick. And I was like, I need some serious weekly therapy. So I like got back into therapy, which I had, I do on and off like as needed now. And I was like telling the therapist, like, okay, so the pandemic started. I got engaged, I got married, I got pregnant, I got a book deal, I'm pregnant, I'm writing the book. I'm having a baby in August, and the book comes out in November. It got pushed a couple times, but I was like, I think I'm just like overwhelmed because life has changed very fast and very quickly.
Yeah.
And she was like, and I don't think I had really articulated everything that had like happened or that was happening. And she was like, just so you know, like, even though these are all positive things, not the pandemic, but like the personal things were all positive, like it's okay to still feel overwhelmed and to still be like, whoa, what is life? Like things are happening so quickly, and being able to work through that with like a third party and to be like, no, it's okay. Like it's okay to be overwhelmed, and it's okay to feel like, oh yeah, life changed very quickly, and to work through that. That was like a big thing. And then now really just kind of taking things one day at a time and figuring things out like as I go. And I mean, having a baby, it's like a great and hard thing is every week you have a different baby.
Yeah.
And so like it is the coolest thing to watch him grow.
Yeah.
In terms of my own life, it is very hard to have a different baby every week and to be like, what worked last week doesn't work this week in terms of working. And so I think I've just been like giving myself grace. It has been a crazy 2 years professionally for me. And like I'm never gonna get one, I'm so lucky to have a job where I have the flexibility and can work while being a mom full time. And I'm so grateful for that. And like, I'm never going to get this time back with him. And so I'm putting him first, and I'm grateful. Like my husband's working from home, and that makes being a working mom like so much easier, but I'm kind of just like figuring it out. I'm also giving myself like the time off.
Yes. Good. As you should.
Really feel like an off, but like it is definitely scaled back. And
Yeah.
I needed that break. I think even if I hadn't had a baby, just because everything had been so crazy for 2 years. And like, I always talk about like careers being, you know, a lot of times it feels like you're on a plateau, like nothing's happening, but that's actually when all like the background noise is happening. And I was like on things were going crazy. And so I feel like I'm back on the plateau again, which like feels good.
Good. That's great. And like, obviously, you know, we're going to let you go now. Obviously books are a huge part of your life. They're a big part of your business too. Please follow Carly's book club, and obviously, purchase Business Minded. Think we'll ever see another book from you, maybe. And maybe, I know you, please follow, like Carly has so many different book interests. You do a great job of reading a really wide selection, and she does great ratings, and she really talks about them, and what she thinks about them in a really good way. Any more books from you in the future? And maybe what are some of your favorites? Like, I won't say right now, because I think asking a mom to like rattle off a book that she read, like I
did just read a book that I'm obsessed with called 4,000 Weeks. And it actually is like relevant to like, you only have an infinite amount, or you have a finite amount of time on like Earth. Like, how are you going to make it count? And like, to give yourself the grace to be like, well, instead of saying I only have 4,000 weeks, to say I have 4,000 weeks to make it count. It's a really good book. I actually cried while reading it, because like the first hour, it felt like everything I was feeling was written out, and it was like, it gave me permission in a sense. It was great. In terms of writing another book myself, it's probably about like the same way of thinking about, oh, are you going to have another kid? Where it's like, maybe down the line, but right now I just can't think about it.
I love it. Such an honest answer. And like, you know what? Focus on the baby right now. Focus on yourself. Enjoy.
Like, let's keep promoting this book. Let's keep raising the baby. Like maybe there'll be a sibling, and maybe there'll be another book, but soon.
I love it. Carly, thank you so much for being here. The book is wonderful. Please pick it up, Business Minded. I really genuinely think that every writer and every creative person should read this book. I think it's one of, I've read a lot of like books like this. Like I've always been very interested in the intersection of creativity and business. And I think it's a great book.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me on, and it was a great conversation.
This was awesome. Everyone have a great day. Thank you so much for joining us on A Mighty Blaze. I'm Jenna Paone. Thank you so much, Carly Riordan, for joining us. Thank you to our producer, Julie Gerstenblatt, and thank you to our Blaze family out there. We'll see you next time.